Hey, this is Alex Head, founder of Subtext Radio.
This is Subtext.
Please go ahead and click the like button and the subscribe button. It really helps us to reach new audiences and promote the artists that we work with. Hit like and hit subscribe.
Building with constant elevation through the sound waves of your radio station.
This is Subtext.
Can you come up with to it on? Yeah.
Nimm den Tempelhofer-Feld.
Und ein Klotz. Was geht doch? Das bist du jetzt schon.
Wir gehen jetzt 12 Minuten That trombone is so fucking loud. Tschüss, wir sehen uns. Dann komme ich gleich wieder genau hierher.
Those are the sounds in front of the bar, Circus Lemke, the former bar in Berlin, Circus Lemke, who held a funeral for the bar, New Orleans jazz style, back in May 2018. My name's Rosanna.
And I'm Gregor.
And we're sitting here in my studio in Berlin, just a few blocks away from where that recording was made, in Berlin-Neukölln. And today we're doing not live radio, sadly not live radio, for Threads Radio, due to various conditions and rules that everyone is aware of. Making live radio in groups is still somewhat of a challenge. So we're sitting here, just the two of us, making a show for you today, but we're keeping the live element alive, and we're just going to record now for half an hour continuously and not make any edits. So welcome to the show. This is What Did You Hear? It's a listening session that Gregor and I are going to offer to everyone listening today. Broadcasting from Berlin, but also in London, of course, and anywhere else in the world that you might be listening to. This is the Threads Radio, threadsradio.com, and right now what you're listening to today is the Subtext Radio takeover, celebrating 4 years of Subtext Radio. And yeah, in this session today, we're going to think about what the last 4 years has been by listening to some different recordings that we've made in that time, and think about what can 4 years be. Gregor, would you like to add anything to that?
Maybe we just start with introducing Ultrared a little bit, and then the people got more of the context, and afterwards it's easier to context our audio files.
Yeah, good idea. Exactly. So we haven't introduced ourselves yet. Maybe we should start with ourselves before we introduce our practice.
Why not?
Wir können uns auch selber vorstellen. It can also be the case that German comes up in the show today because, of course, we're sitting here in Berlin and we both speak German. So it's a bilingual show broadcasting through and beyond 2 locations in Berlin and London.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Gregor. We are here in Berlin today, and normally I'm doing art in different media like video, sound art, installation, public art, but also sometimes radio. And yeah, that's for me now.
Yeah, and my name's Rosanna, and I also live in Berlin. I'm a musician that works a lot with sound and radio, and I also work in the field of music education, and I do performance works and sound works and radio broadcasts. And I really enjoy collaborating with other artists and other musicians, and Gregor and I have been working and collaborating together for quite a few years now, more than 4 years, I would say, beyond the 4-year bracket that we've put around this show in celebration of subtext radio. Developing a sound practice, whether it's for radio or sound pieces or also in an educational context. We've been working with the methods and materials of the sound art collective Ultra Red, and we're inviting you today to be part of a listening session based around these methods. And we're going to start by reading a little introduction from Ultra Red, from their small book, 5 Protocols for Organised Listening, with the variations, from 2011. What did you hear? Was hast du gehört? Rather than ending with representation, we begin with representation. Then, what did you hear? The question enters the object into a relationship, an interrogation. When the representation is about to close in on itself, we restate the question or displace one object with another. As a second consequence of asking, what did you hear? Was hast du gehört? We situate our sound practice in relation to specific constituencies, locations, conditions, and concerns. Most importantly, we organize listening as a collective rather than as an individual procedure. Listening as a relation to an other. Finally, and perhaps most difficult to discuss, is the tense of the question. What did you hear? There is an acoustic action, the tension that bends to it, and then the question. What did you hear? What we heard was our encounter with the object. Our responses to the question teach us, in part, the terms of that encounter. The articulation of these terms provides the foundation for a political analysis. Thus, rather than only paying attention to what the sound represents, to what it indicates or means, collective organizing benefits from a rigorous understanding of how we tender our attention, of how we listen. And the object there that Ultra Red are referring to is a sound object.
Rather than promoting specific rules about sound inquiry, the protocols compiled in this workbook remind us instead of the important dialectical rapport between open attentiveness and intentional commitment. Without that dialectic, listening procedures can fall dangerously into rigid formalism or aesthetic experience for its own sake. A protocol is not a formula. Neither it is the procedure itself. Rather, it is a record and a catalyst for collective reflection, analysis, and action to come. It is an idea whose meaning will have been produced at the scene of reception, sound that will have resonated in embodiment. Hence the question, what did you hear? Was hast du gehört? Becomes itself a protocol, the primary protocol that choreographs an inquiry.
So we are now going to read one of the ultra-red protocols for a listening session. And as we just heard, these can be a guidance. These would usually be used in a group setting, in a live group setting with real people in a room. And we're inviting you to join us through the radio waves to some kind of listening session. So, ultra-red, right? Protocols for a listening session have been composed by ultra-red for organising collective listening to pre-recorded sounds. The protocols seek to put the recording and its listeners into process by privileging the ear that hears over the sound recording itself. The protocol starts with 0, and then number 1, introduction. Explain the listening session procedure and its purpose. We invite you to listen with us today. Number 2, listen to the sound recordings. Without introduction. Number 3, what did you hear? After playing each sound recording, ask the group to write what they heard on the paper covering the table and speak into the microphone. Announce time after 1 minute. We're going to leave that open for you to do as you wish. Number 4, tell the story. Invite the person who made the recordings to tell the story behind them, not to validate or invalidate the responses, but as another object to be heard. And we'll share some stories with you today. Number 5, what did you hear? Ask the group to write what they heard on the table and speak into the microphone. Announce time after 1 minute. Once again, this remains open. You're very much welcome to make notes while listening to the field recordings we'll share with you today, or to just reflect on them as you listen to them. Step 7, or number 7, analyse what is heard. This would be the moment where, if you're with a large group, you would form smaller groups and invite participants to compare their responses. They say, keep a written record of the discussion. The tendency in the discussion may be to reach agreement on important themes by resolving differences in experiences or knowledge. Attend to your differences as issues to be investigated, rather than as problems to be solved. Number 8, write the theme. Review the record of the discussion in each small group by asking the question, what did you learn? Write exactly what is said onto flip chart paper. So you can see already we're going to diverge slightly from that protocol, but this gives a nice impression of the kind of materials that ultra-red have developed and that we've been working with to both make recordings and to listen to them.
Yeah.
Rosanna, what did you hear?
Well, just there, I think I can hear a tropical evening with the little insects that are there in the background, but also kind of this earthy, deep, male-sounding voice in this rhythmical, repetitive kind of singing and sounds of, I want to say, a city. Yeah. And then before that, there was another kind of voice, a woman's voice in a more melodic kind of frame, and it sounds like it's not from Berlin. I can say that, but I wouldn't say more.
Okay, these two recordings that you heard were from Lomé, which is the capital of Togo. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I traveled several times to Togo to do a research on German colonial history. And these two recordings were actually from church. The first one was on a Sunday morning, waking me up at around 7 o'clock. And the second one was from one evening, 2 different churches, but were around the corner from the place where I slept. And yeah, these church sounds are everywhere, and sometimes it's like more melodic and soft, and sometimes it's feeling like grime music. Someone is rapping or speaking with the devil, and it's always very intense.
And were you inside the church or just outside or nearby?
No, this was from the room where I stayed, but and the churches are around maybe 200-300 meters away.
Oh wow!
But the room has no closed windows, so it's a little bit like when you are at the festival and you're sleeping in your tent, and then you're hearing the sounds from all over the place.
There is a bit of a festival vibe, isn't there? Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. And this is from one of your earlier trips to Lomé or one of your more recent trips?
This is about 4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago. Nice. You managed to escape Berlin, Gregor.
Yeah, it was a very nice feeling, and also very gives you a lot of energy not to think all the day about Corona, because in Togo the situation now is a little bit more relaxed than in Europe. So it was a good time.
Yeah, and this is one of the themes that we're thinking about today in this, concentrating on this 4-year time period, is who travels, where, how and why, and what can that mean, or what does that mean, or what can we share from that experience?
Again, what did you hear?
It's like a narrator narrating a city.
This recording is for my first trip about 4 or 5 years ago, and this was on a big street, and I was just sitting there with my sound recorder and did a 433 session just to listen to the sounds of the street. And this person which you hear in the background, he was on a big truck, and it was something like public radio maybe. So people had a big speakers, and they were announcing, I think, some news or something, and they're driving through the city with a truck and giving the people the newest stuff they need to know from officials or so. And then there was this street sound, and for me, because it was my first trip to the Global South, and for this first trip I didn't use my camera and just use sound recordings to do like memories, because the eye and the visual aspect is so much filled with the colonial gaze, and I try to circuit this a little bit, and instead using sound for perceiving the environment and for getting all this new information from this place.
And the memories. And I'm sure you have, the sound can really take us very quickly to a place we've been. So I'm not there in Lomé, but I'm sure you are when you're listening to it. I really like the idea that we're rebroadcasting on here on Threads Radio and Subtext Radio, some sort of community radio that happened in Lomé back 3 or 4 years ago. Layers of radio and listening and broadcasting and different listening audiences all sort of overlapping. I hope there's someone listening that could understand a bit of what he was saying.
What did you hear? Was hast du gehört?
Sounds recognizable probably to lots of people all over the world. I'm tempted to say it has to be a football game, just because that's one of the most popular sports all over the world, and it had those horns. I think those special kind of horns that you hear at football games have somehow also become just as international as the game itself. Gregor, tell us the story.
Yeah, this was actually from a football play. And at this time there was something like a West African Cup, and so all the football teams from West Africa were in Lomé, and we were accidentally at this place, and we just go into the stadium and watch the football game. And I thought, as nowadays is the European Championships, with some audience, but not as much as usual, and I thought this is a good remembering times when the stadiums are full of people.
Yeah, for everyone missing being in the stadium, and that big crowd feeling of lots of noise and lots of bodies and voices, and that special feeling that it has. They can enjoy that recording and have their own memories. I mean, that's what's so interesting. I feel like it really could have been a football game anywhere. So I'm sure it had a strong associative effect for a lot of people that enjoy going to football games and being in the big crowd anywhere in the world, with that sort of energy that comes across so strong in the acoustic method and the acoustic listening experience. Yeah, so Gregor, you've shared some recordings from your different trips to Togo over the years, and like you said, kind of focusing on this acoustic way of documenting your trip. Have you noticed any changes, because you've now gone to Lomé several times, either acoustically or otherwise, during your different trips there?
Now I also taking photos.
Yeah.
That's a difference. So the sound pieces got a little bit less, but I'm still doing them. And I'm not so often in Lomé, so every time I've been there, it's like new and fresh. So it's still very interesting just to listen to this sounds, because it's like different sounds and different vibrations than in Berlin. So it's like watching TV but using your ears.
Yeah, taking you somewhere else. Yeah. And for some listeners, it might be taking them to a memory or a place that they've been that had a similar acoustic, and for others it might be a fantasy trip of the imagination, listening to these recordings and traveling there through their listening. So we were very interested in thinking about travel and location and listening to locations, especially in light of the last year and a half, which everyone's been experiencing in different ways. But also one thing that's been heavily impacted is the ability to travel and to move around the globe, but also to move around our more intimate geographies, maybe of just one country or even one city. And there's the only place that I've travelled to beyond Berlin, or the only other country I've been to, and the main other place I've been to has been travelling by train to a neighbouring country, and I'm going to share some sounds with you. Links. What did you hear, Gregor?
When I closed my eyes and tried to imagine what this sound could be, there was this drone and this like a little bit like white noise. But then there was an announcement from this person, and so I got reminded then that this is in the train.
Yes, it is in the ICE train, the high-speed train, going from Berlin to Salzburg. So I've been studying a course in Salzburg while living here in Berlin, and that actually gave me permission to travel to Salzburg despite the different travel restrictions and rules that were in place at different times. So I had this permission from the university to travel there. So that was also an interesting experience, being someone allowed to travel around and cross borders on the train when it was very restricted in both Austria and in Germany. And it's also interesting when you repeat a journey, how you get to know the journey itself, not just the places you're going to. So I now have this very particular knowledge of getting the train from Berlin to Munich, changing at Munich to then get the next train from Munich to Salzburg, and all of the not only acoustic experiences and memories, but everything else that goes with that. And the train ride itself becomes its own kind of time as well. It's just the train ride now, kind of like a piece of music can just beyond a 5-minute piece of music. It's just how long that music piece goes for. That's kind of like what the train trip is for me. And as well as sharing these, for some people maybe very particular sounds of a train, and for other people maybe more foreign sounds, I've got a few other recordings to share with you. You might not be able to notice here, but for me, this is the sound of Salzburg Hauptbahnhof, Salzburg Central Station, which might not really come across in the recording, but the trains have very different sounds to the trains in the German stations to compare with Berlin Central Station or Munich Central Station, and it wasn't possible to kind of record that in its detail. But it's really fascinating. There's this very different acoustic to the trains there, and we heard some churches before in Lomé, and now we're going to hear some in Salzburg. Was hast du gehört? What did you hear?
Yeah, some bells of church, I guess. With I don't know if it was a concert or just a normal noise that they make every 15 minutes or every hour.
That's midday on a Friday in the center of Salzburg at Mirabellplatz, where one church starts and another one starts, and then you have a delay of church bells. Before we listened to it, I thought it was going to sound more European, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily specifically European church bell sound. I think it could actually probably be in many different places. Any thoughts, Gregor?
I was thinking if they really have a conversation and talking to each other, or if they just every bell does their own rhythm.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about how deliberate or not deliberate it is, that delay of the bells. I mean, it was very distinct. One started just a little bit earlier, and the other one joined in. Yeah, but probably one of the things that makes Salzburg a very attractive tourist destination are these beautiful old churches and the old architecture. So it was interesting to capture this moment as I was walking along Mirabellplatz, which is also, there's lots of bus stops there and lots of people just, connecting to different places, as well as it being this lovely tourist destination in the city.
And what came into my mind, this Christian church sound is very different from this church sounds in West Africa. So they are all praising Jesus, but the way they do, it's very, very different, and probably some people who go here in Germany or in Europe every Sunday morning in the church, they probably think if they go to a church in Togo, to a Christian church, that they may be in the wrong place.
Yeah. And it's interesting how clearly that came across in these sonic moments of the recordings. It's immediately apparent how different these traditions are and these practices of the Christian religion. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up now. That's been our listening session, and we hope that you've had your own thoughts and ideas and reflections about what we listened to. That's What Did You Hear? A listening session with me, Rosanna, and Gregor, here on Threads Radio, threadsradio.com, as part of Subtext Radio's broadcast celebrating 4 years of Subtext Radio. Yeah, we had a few different themes that emerged today in the listening session around travel, mobility, how that's changed, perhaps, or been different for different people over the last 4 years, not just the last year, but over that time. How often do you go somewhere, and what does it mean to you, and what does it sound like, and what can that symbolize for you as well? We hope you've enjoyed these recordings.
And thanks for listening with us. And maybe you take the phrase, what did you hear, into your day and ask yourself in the next days, what sounds I actually hear and what could they mean, should they mean, or how they interact with each other.
And maybe you even want to talk with someone else about it as well. Everyone's invited to also explore this idea of recording, making field recordings, either with your phone or a really simple audio recording device, and to use that as a way to record memories, but also to develop a listening practice. We're going to finish with another Berlin recording going back 3 years ago. You could have heard this when you're out and about in Berlin.
I was a 27-year-old PhD student, actress-director, who had completely forgot the existence of subtext.